Gambino crime family, one of the most infamous and powerful Italian-American mafia families, has left an unmistakable influence on both the criminal underground and popular culture. The Gambino family, named for its founder, Salvatore Toto D'Aquila, has a long history stretching back to the early 20th century, rising to prominence via unlawful operations such as racketeering, extortion, loan sharking, and more.
The Gambino crime family, an Italian-American mafia organization, stands as one of New York City's infamous five families that shape organized crime within the broader network known as the American Mafia. Between 1910 and 1957, the group navigated leadership changes through five different bosses before being named after Carlo Gambino, who led the family during the pivotal 1963 McClellan hearings that first unveiled the workings of organized crime to the public. Spanning operations from New York to the West Coast, the Gambino family has engaged in a range of criminal enterprises, including labor and construction racketeering, gambling, loan sharking, extortion, money laundering, and more. Founded in the aftermath of the Castellamarese War in 1931, the family initially played a smaller role in the organized crime scene. One of its most notorious figures during this era was underboss Albert Anastasia, who gained a fearsome reputation as the leader of Murder Inc., the underworld's enforcement division. Even after the dissolution of Murder Inc. in the late 1940s, Anastasia maintained power and took control of the family in 1951, reportedly after orchestrating the murder of its founder, Vincent Mangano. The group was subsequently recognized as the Anastasia crime family during his rule. The emergence of what would become America's most influential crime family began in 1957, marked by the assassination of Albert Anastasia as he sat in a barber chair at Manhattan's Park Sheraton Hotel. Many historians suspect that Carlo Gambino, Anastasia's underboss, played a pivotal role in orchestrating the murder to seize control of the family. Once in power, Gambino teamed up with Meyer Lansky to expand their influence over lucrative gambling operations in Cuba and other locations. The family's power and wealth continued to rise until 1976, when Gambino, on his deathbed, named his brother-in-law Paul Castellano as his successor. Castellano's leadership, however, ignited tensions with ambitious capo John Gotti, who arranged for Castellano's assassination in 1985. Gotti's reign came to an abrupt end in 1992 when his underboss, Salvatore "Sammy the Bull" Gravano, turned informant and testified for the FBI, resulting in Gotti and numerous senior Gambino members being imprisoned. By 2015, Frank Cali emerged as the family's new leader, a position he held until his assassination outside his Staten Island home on March 13, 2019. The Gambino crime family's roots stretch back to early 20th century New York, where a group of Sicilian mafiosi from Palermo established their presence under the leadership of Ignazio Lupo. Lupo, along with his business partner and brother-in-law Giuseppe Morello, commanded a formidable operation until their imprisonment for counterfeiting in 1910. With the two leaders behind bars, Salvatore Toto D'Aquila, one of Lupo's top lieutenants, seized the moment to take control. D'Aquila, a significant figure from Palermo himself, had joined Lupo's East Harlem-based Mano Nera gang, an early and influential Italian crime syndicate in New York. Morello, recognized as the first capo di tutti capi, boss of bosses, had held sway over New York's emerging mafia factions. But by 1910, with Morello and Lupo incarcerated, D'Aquila capitalized on the power vacuum to strengthen his Palermitani faction. Using his strategic relationships with other mafia leaders across the U.S., D'Aquila expanded his reach and cemented his authority in the city's criminal landscape, becoming a formidable force. His name first appeared in police records in 1906, tied to a confidence scam that marked the beginning of his rise. By 1910, Italian gangs had expanded significantly across New York City. The Morello gang, based in East Harlem, had been joined by D'Aquila's influential crew, which was extending its reach from East Harlem into Manhattan's Lower East Side and Little Italy. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, Niccolo Colashiro established a powerful Sicilian gang made up of mafiosi from Castellammare del Golfo, a town west of Palermo, Sicily. Another formidable Sicilian faction in Brooklyn was led by Alfred Mineo. In the Bronx, Gaetano Reina, a former captain under the Morello family, carved out his own domain and held power without opposition. South Brooklyn saw the rise of a new force under Johnny Torrio, succeeded by Frankie Yale, who led a burgeoning organization. Additionally, Two allied Neapolitan Camorra groups were on the scene, one based in Coney Island and the other on Navy Street in Brooklyn, commanded by Pellegrino Morano and Alessandro Vogliero, respectively. In 1916, the Camorra orchestrated the assassination of Nicholas Morello, the influential leader of the Morello gang. This bold move triggered a response from Salvatore D'Aquila, who formed an alliance with the Morellos to challenge the Camorra's power. By 1917, the Camorra's key leaders, Alessandro Morano and Tony Vogliero, faced convictions for murder and were sentenced to life imprisonment. With their leadership dismantled, the Camorra's influence crumbled, allowing D'Aquila and the Shiro family in Brooklyn to seize control of many of their operations. D'Aquila soon absorbed the Mineo gang, appointing Giuseppe Mineo as his right-hand man, and cemented his status as the leader of the most powerful Italian crime syndicate in New York City. Meanwhile, Joe Masseria, a former Morello captain, began to assert his dominance over Little Italy on Manhattan's Lower East Side, leading to inevitable friction with D'Aquila's expanding territory as the Prohibition era loomed. In 1920, the United States enacted Prohibition, effectively banning the production and sale of alcoholic beverages. This move created a lucrative black market that the city's crime families rushed to exploit. By then, D'Aquila's main contender was Giuseppe "Joe the Boss" Masseria, who had taken control of the remnants of the Morello family's operations. By the mid-1920s, Masseria had built a power base strong enough to challenge D'Aquila's supremacy, setting the stage for a clash between the two formidable crime leaders by the decade's end. On October 10, 1928, Salvatore D'Aquila was gunned down by hitmen working for Masseria right outside his own home. Following D'Aquila's death, his trusted lieutenant, Alfred Mineo, and his right-hand man, Steve Ferrigno, took the reins of what became the most powerful Sicilian gang in New York City. By 1930, tensions escalated into the Castellamarese War, a violent struggle for supremacy in Italian-American organized crime between Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano, the new leader of the Castellamarese gang, formerly led by Colashiro. Tragically, Mineo became a victim of this conflict when both he and Ferrigno were killed in an assassination attempt targeting Masseria on November 5, 1930. The following April, Masseria met his end in a restaurant, betrayed and shot by members of his own gang who had switched allegiance to Maranzano. Seizing power, Maranzano proclaimed himself the boss of all bosses and reorganized New York's gangs into 5 distinct crime families, appointing Frank Scalise as the head of the former D'Aquila Mineo gang. However, in September 1931, Maranzano was himself murdered in his office by a team of contract killers, an operation orchestrated by Charlie "Lucky" Luciano. Luciano not only preserved the structure of Maranzano's 5 families, but also established a commission to help resolve disputes and curb the cycle of gang violence. In 1931, Luciano made a strategic move by replacing Scalise with Vincent Mangano as the leader of the D'Aquila Mineo gang, which would soon be known as the Mangano crime family. This shift also secured Mangano a position on the newly formed commission, signaling the dawn of a modern era for the Cosa Nostra. As the new head of the family, Mangano was accompanied by Joseph Biondo as consigliere and Albert Anastasia as underboss. While Mangano valued the traditional mob principles of honor, respect, and dignity, he also embraced a more progressive approach compared to his predecessors Masseria and Maranzano. Facing the significant financial impact of Prohibition's end in 1933, he pivoted his operations toward extortion, union racketeering, and illegal gambling ventures, including horse betting and lotteries. Mangano further expanded his influence by founding the City Democratic Club, which he claimed was dedicated to upholding American values. However, the club was actually a front for Murder Inc., a notorious group primarily composed of Jewish hitmen who executed contracts for the Cosa Nostra across the country. Albert Anastasia, known as the Lord High Executioner, led Murder Inc. with a ruthless efficiency that solidified the family's power. Vincent Mangano shared a significant alliance with Emile Camarda, who served as a vice president of the International Longshoremen's Association, ILA. This connection enabled Mangano and his family to dominate the waterfronts of Manhattan and Brooklyn entirely. Starting in 1932, the leadership of ILA Local 1814 fell to Anthony "Tough Tony" Anastasio, the younger brother of notorious mobster Albert Anastasia, who retained the family's original surname spelling. Anastasio became one of the family's key financial players, channeling millions in kickbacks and payoffs into their operations. He was openly connected to the mob, A simple mention of "my brother Albert" was enough to signal his influence. Backed by the family, Anastasio ruled the Brooklyn waterfront for 3 decades. During this period, Carlo Gambino began rising through the ranks of the Mangano family, alongside his cousin, Paul Castellano, who would also become a future boss. Despite their collaboration over 20 years, tensions simmered between Anastasio and Mangano. Their relationship was fraught with near-physical confrontations, largely due to Mangano's unease over Anastasio's close connections with prominent mob figures like Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, and Joseph Bonanno. Additionally, Mangano harbored jealousy towards Anastasio's formidable power within Murder Inc. and the waterfront unions, creating a volatile mix of rivalry and dependence. In April 1951, Vincent Mangano vanished mysteriously, while his brother Philip was discovered dead. Despite extensive investigations, no one was ever charged in connection with their deaths, and Vincent's remains were never located. The prevailing theory is that Albert Anastasia was behind both murders. When summoned before the commission, Anastasia denied any involvement in the Mangano killings. However, he did assert that Vincent had been plotting to eliminate him. By this time, Anastasia had effectively taken control of the family during Vincent's unexplained absence, and his formidable presence left the commission members feeling intimidated. Backed by Frank Costello, the powerful leader of the Luciano crime family, the commission officially recognized Anastasia as the new boss of what became known as the Anastasia crime family. Meanwhile, Carlo Gambino, a clever player with his sights set on the leadership, positioned himself as consigliere. Anastasia, a notorious figure previously leading Murder Inc., was feared throughout the New York crime families. With Costello at his side, he gained significant influence over the commission. Yet lurking in the shadows was Vito Genovese, a former underboss to Lucky Luciano, who had been plotting to dethrone Costello since 1946, but lacked the strength to confront Anastasia directly. Anastasia's ruthless tactics eventually set the stage for his downfall in New York. In 1952, he orchestrated the assassination of Arnold Schuster, a Brooklyn resident who had helped capture notorious bank robber Willie Sutton. Anastasia was furious that Schuster had assisted the police, and his callous act sparked outrage among the New York crime families, leading to significant public outcry. His actions also soured his relationship with Meyer Lansky, a powerful ally of Luciano, by launching competing casinos in Cuba. This move prompted Genovese and Lansky to recruit Carlo Gambino, offering him the chance to step into Anastasia's shoes as the new boss. By May 1957, Frank Costello narrowly survived an assassination attempt orchestrated by Genovese and, feeling the heat, chose to resign from his position. However, unbeknownst to them, Costello was secretly plotting with Anastasia to reclaim his power. This betrayal led Genovese and Gambino to conspire to eliminate Anastasia once and for all. On October 25, 1957, a shocking assassination took place in the Park Sheraton Hotel's barbershop in Manhattan, where a group of masked gunmen gunned down mobster Albert Anastasia. While seated in the barber's chair, Anastasia was ambushed as the assailants pushed the barber aside and opened fire. Despite being injured, Anastasia reportedly made a desperate attempt to fight back, only striking at the reflections of his attackers in the mirror before succumbing to his wounds at the scene. Many historians assert that Carlo Gambino orchestrated the hit, instructing Caporegime Joseph Biondo to carry out the order. Biondo, in turn, enlisted a team of Gambino-affiliated drug dealers, led by Stephen Armone and Stephen Gramauda, to execute the plan. Anastasia's murder paved the way for Gambino to ascend as the boss of what would soon be known as the Gambino crime family, with Biondo taking the role of underboss, a position he would hold until Agnello Della Croce replaced him in 1965. In a twist of intrigue, Gambino and the notorious Lucky Luciano allegedly financed a $100,000 scheme to frame rival mobster Vito Genovese in a drug deal. This conspiracy culminated in Genovese receiving a 15-year sentence in federal prison in April 1959, where he remained until his death in 1969. Under Gambino's leadership, his family swiftly rose to become the most formidable crime syndicate in the United States. His ascent was bolstered by the support of Meyer Lansky, whose offshore gaming operations in Cuba and the Bahamas proved to be a lucrative venture for the Cosa Nostra. In a dramatic turn of events in 1964, Joseph Joe Bananas Bonanno, head of the Bonanno crime family, and Joseph Magliocco, the newly appointed boss of the Profaci crime family, plotted to eliminate Gambino and his associates on the commission. However, their plan was foiled when Joseph Colombo, the designated hitman, alerted Gambino to the impending danger. The fallout was swift. Under Gambino's leadership, the commission compelled Magliocco to step down and turn control of his family over to Colombo, while Bonanno fled New York, leaving Gambino as the undisputed leader of the five families. In 1971, Gambino allegedly leveraged his influence to orchestrate an assassination attempt on Colombo, who had been garnering too much public attention for Gambino's liking. On June 28, during the second Italian-American Unity Day rally, Jerome Johnson opened fire on Colombo but was immediately gunned down by Colombo's bodyguards. Although Johnson was rumored to have ties to the Gambino family, no one else faced charges in connection with the incident. Colombo survived the attack but was left paralyzed until his death in 1978. Gambino's influence extended deep into the shadows of organized crime, particularly with the Lucchese crime family, which was under the leadership of Carmine "Mr. Gribbs" Tramunti. In a pivotal move in 1972, Gambino reportedly chose Frank "Funzi" Thierry to take the helm as the front boss of the Genovese crime family. This decision followed Gambino's alleged order for the murder of Thierry's predecessor, Thomas Eboli, who had failed to repay a staggering $3 million loan. However, some insiders suggest that Eboli's death was orchestrated by his own family due to his unpredictable behavior. Under Gambino's leadership, the crime family significantly strengthened its grip on the construction industry. They covertly gained control of Teamsters Local 282, which managed the supply of building materials throughout the New York City area, giving them the power to halt construction projects across the city at will. On October 15, 1976, Carlo Gambino passed away peacefully at home from natural causes. Contrary to many expectations, he chose to pass the reins to Castellano instead of his underboss, Della Croce. Gambino seemed to believe that Castellano's focus on white-collar enterprises would enhance the family's interests. At the time, Della Croce was incarcerated for tax evasion, leaving him unable to challenge Castellano's ascension to power. On November 24, Castellano's leadership was officially recognized during a pivotal meeting that included Della Croce. As part of the transition, Castellano ensured that Della Croce would keep his position as underboss, overseeing the classic operations of the Cosa Nostra, such as extortion, robbery, and loan sharking. Although Della Croce agreed to Castellano's rise to power, this arrangement ultimately divided the Gambino family into two rival factions. Under Castellano's leadership, a new division of labor was established. He took charge of white-collar crimes, which involved stock embezzlement and other lucrative rackets, while Della Croce continued to manage traditional organized crime activities. To maintain his grip over the Della Croce faction, Castellano enlisted the support of crews led by Anthony Nino Gaggi and Roy DeMeo. This notorious DeMeo crew was implicated in an astonishing number of murders, between 74 and 200, during the late 1970s and early 1980s, solidifying their feared reputation in the criminal underworld. As Castellano rose to prominence within the Gambino family, he tapped into lucrative profits from the concrete construction industry. His son, Philip, served as president of Scaramix Concrete Corporation, which effectively dominated the Staten Island market for construction concrete. Castellano also played a crucial role in overseeing the Gambino family's interest in the Concrete Club, an exclusive group of contractors appointed by the commission to manage contracts valued between $2 million and $15 million. In exchange for these lucrative deals, the contractors provided a 2% kickback on the total contract value to the commission. Additionally, Castellano maintained control over Teamsters Union Local, Chapter 282, the organization responsible for supplying labor for concrete work on major construction projects throughout New York and Long Island. In light of the Gambino family's growing influence, federal prosecutors turned their attention to its leadership. On March 31, 1984, a federal grand jury indicted Castellano along with 20 other members and associates of the Gambino family on various charges including drug trafficking, murder, theft, and prostitution. The following year, Castellano faced a second indictment linked to the mafia's commission. Confronted with the possibility of life imprisonment for either case, Castellano took steps to ensure continuity in leadership by appointing John Gotti as acting boss alongside Thomas Bellotti, his trusted capo, and Thomas Gambino during his potential absence. John Gotti, a bold capo from Queens and a protege of the late Della Croce, was Castellano's most vocal opponent. Gotti's ambition knew no bounds. He wanted to ascend to the position of boss himself. Quickly, he grew disillusioned with Castellano's leadership, perceiving the new boss as overly isolated and greedy. Gotti, like many others in the family, personally disliked Castellano. The boss lacked the street credibility that earned respect among those who had worked their way up through tough street-level jobs. Gotti's grievances extended to financial matters as well, particularly a contentious dispute over the profits he received from hijackings at Kennedy Airport. Additionally, Gotti was rumored to be venturing into the lucrative drug trade that Castellano had strictly forbidden. In August 1983, Ruggiero and Gene Gotti found themselves in hot water, arrested for heroin distribution after authorities recorded incriminating evidence from a bug planted in Ruggiero's home. Castellano, who had imposed a death threat on any made man involved in drugs, demanded transcripts of the recordings. When Ruggiero refused to comply, Castellano retaliated by threatening to demote Gotti. Fueled by frustration, Gotti began plotting with discontented capos Frank DeSico and Joseph Joe Piney Armone, alongside soldiers Sammy Gravano and Robert D.B. DiBernardo, who dubbed themselves the Fist. They sought to unseat Castellano, convinced that despite the boss's current inaction, he would ultimately turn against Gotti. Armone's backing was pivotal. As a respected veteran with ties to the family's origins under founder Vincent Mangano, his support lent vital legitimacy to their conspiracy. For decades, a crucial rule within the mafia has been that taking out a boss requires the backing of the majority of the commission. If John Gotti had gone through with his plan, it would have marked the first assassination of a boss since Albert Anastasia's demise in 1957. Aware of the dangers of seeking support from the other four bosses, all of whom had deep ties to Paul Castellano, Gotti cleverly sought the allegiance of influential figures from the Lucchese, Colombo, and Bonanno families instead. The Genovese family was off the table for him, given Castellano's close relationship with their boss, Vincent Chin Gigante. Nevertheless, Gotti had the support of Gambino consigliere Joseph N. Gallo, adding to his confidence. After the death of underboss Agnello Della Croce from cancer on December 2, 1985, Castellano altered his succession plan, promoting Bellotti to underboss under Thomas Gambino, who would serve as the acting boss. He also intended to dismantle Gotti's crew, which only fueled Gotti's anger, especially after Castellano snubbed Della Croce's wake. Driven by fury and a desire for power, Gotti resolved to eliminate his boss. On December 16, 1985, Bellotti and Castellano arrived at Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan for a dinner meeting with Capo Frank DeSico, who had discreetly informed Gotti about their plans. As Bellotti and Castellano stepped out of their car, 4 unidentified gunmen under Gotti's command opened fire, killing them both instantly. Gotti watched the execution unfold from his own vehicle, with his trusted ally Salvatore Gravano by his side. In the wake of Castellano's murder, John Gotti was swiftly appointed to a 3-man committee alongside Gallo and DeSico to oversee the Gambino family until a new boss could be elected. An internal investigation into the murder was announced, but it was widely understood that Gotti was effectively the acting boss. Most of the family's capos were well aware that he orchestrated the hit. On January 15, 1986, he was officially recognized as the new boss during a meeting with 20 capos. Gotti wasted no time in solidifying his leadership, appointing Frank DeSico as his underboss and promoting Angelo Ruggiero and Sammy Gravano to capos. At the time of his ascension, the Gambino family was considered the most powerful mafia organization in America, raking in an impressive $500 million annually. Known as the Dapper Don, Gotti gained notoriety for his impeccably tailored suits and silk ties. Unlike many of his counterparts, he flaunted his mob connections, often providing the media with captivating quotes. His home in Howard Beach, Queens, became a familiar sight on television, and he frequently conducted meetings with family members in public to avoid surveillance by law enforcement. Interestingly, one of Gotti's neighbors was Joseph Massino, the underboss of the Bonanno crime family, and the two had been friends since the 1970s when they were notorious truck hijackers in New York. Leaders from rival crime families were furious over the murder of Castellano and were particularly critical of John Gotti's flashy approach to mob life. Among Gotti's fiercest adversaries was Vincent Chin Gigante, the head of the Genovese crime family and once an ally of Castellano. In a bid to take Gotti down, Gigante joined forces with Anthony "Tony Ducks" Corallo, the boss of the Lucchese family, to orchestrate Gotti's assassination. Corallo handed the hit to two of his top enforcers, Vittorio Vic Amuso and Anthony Gaspipe Casso. Interestingly, Gotti's rising notoriety had a silver lining. When the identity of his would-be assassin surfaced, and amid whispers of intimidation from the Gambinos, key witness Romuald Piecyk opted not to testify against Gotti. This decision was influenced by Bosco the Hugo Radonjic, the powerful leader of the Westies in Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan. When the trial commenced in March 1986, Piecyk shockingly claimed he could not recall who had attacked him. The case was swiftly thrown out, with the New York Post quipping with the headline, "I forgotti." It later emerged that Gambino henchmen had sabotaged Piecyc's car by cutting his brake lines, harassed him with threatening phone calls, and stalked him in the lead-up to the trial. On April 13, 1986, the notorious mobster DeSico met his end when a bomb detonated in his car after he visited Castellano ally James Failla. The deadly plot was orchestrated by Victor Amuso and Anthony Casso of the Lucchese crime family, acting on the orders of powerful figures like Gigante and Lucchese boss Anthony Corallo. Their target was to eliminate Castellano and Bellotti's successors as revenge. Interestingly, John Gotti had intended to visit Failla that same day, but canceled his plans. The bomb was triggered after a soldier accompanying DeSico was mistakenly identified as the boss himself. Historically, the mafia had steered clear of using bombs, fearing the potential harm to innocent bystanders. This led the Gambinos to initially suspect that Zips, Sicilian mobsters operating in the U.S., were responsible, as they had a reputation for such violent tactics. In the aftermath of the bombing, Judge Eugene Nickerson, overseeing Gotti's racketeering trial, postponed proceedings to ensure the jury wasn't influenced by the sensational media coverage. Prosecutor Diane Giacalone also moved to revoke Gotti's bail, citing evidence of witness intimidation in the Piecyk case. From behind bars, Gotti issued a hit on Robert DiBernardo, with Gravano carrying out the order. Both DiBernardo and Ruggiero were in contention to take over DeSico's position, but tensions escalated when Ruggiero accused DiBernardo of undermining Gotti's authority. When Ruggiero's abrasive behavior during preliminary hearings resulted in his bail being revoked, Gotti decided to elevate Armone to the role of underboss instead. In August 1986, jury selection for the high-profile racketeering trial resumed, with notorious mob boss John Gotti facing charges alongside several associates, including Willie Boy Johnson, who, despite being exposed as an informant, remained loyal and refused to testify against his peers, Leonard De Maria, Tony Rampino, Nicholas Carrazzo, and John Carneglia. Tensions mounted when the Gambino crime family managed to influence the proceedings by placing George Pepe on the jury, despite his concealed friendship with a key figure, Radonjic. Pepe ultimately reached out to Gravano and agreed to sell his vote for a staggering $60,000. As the trial kicked off on September 25th, Gotti's defense attorney, Bruce Cutler, launched a bold counteroffensive, denying the very existence of the Gambino family and framing the government's case as a personal vendetta against his client. A key part of Cutler's strategy involved discrediting the prosecution's witnesses by highlighting their past crimes prior to becoming informants. In a surprising turn, Cutler called upon Matthew Traynor, a bank robber whose testimony had initially been deemed unreliable. Traynor claimed that Giacalone had offered him drugs and her underwear in exchange for his cooperation. However, Judge Nickerson dismissed Traynor's sensational allegations as wholly unbelievable after the trial, leading to Traynor's conviction for perjury. Despite the defense presented by Cutler and critiques aimed at the prosecution's handling of the case, mob experts Jerry Capici and Gene Mustaine reported that when jury deliberations began, most jurors leaned toward convicting Gotti. However, Gotti had a distinct advantage from the start. He recognized that due to Pop's misconduct, his worst-case scenario would likely be a hung jury. As deliberations progressed, Pop stubbornly pushed for an acquittal, causing tension as other jurors began to worry about their own safety. Ultimately, on March 13, 1987, the jury acquitted Gotti and his co-defendants on all charges. This verdict came as a significant surprise, especially following previous mafia convictions, including the successful Mafia Commission trial. Gotti's acquittal only bolstered his notorious reputation, earning him the moniker the Teflon Don in the American media, a nod to his uncanny ability to evade legal repercussions. 5 years later, however, Pepe faced justice himself, convicted of obstruction of justice for his involvement in the case, and sentenced to 3 years in prison. On December 11, 1990, a dramatic raid unfolded at the Ravenite Social Club, where FBI agents and NYPD detectives apprehended key figures in the Gambino crime family: Salvatore, Sammy the Bull Gravano, John Gotti, and Frank Locascio. Gravano eventually pleaded guilty to a racketeering charge, while Gotti faced an extensive list of allegations, including 5 counts of murder, specifically the killings of Paul Castellano, Billy Bellotti, Anthony DiBernardo, Liborio Milito, and Louis Di Bono, as well as conspiracy to murder Gaetano Vastola, loan sharking, illegal gambling, obstruction of justice, bribery, and tax evasion. The prosecution built its case using evidence from FBI wiretaps, which played a crucial role during pre-trial hearings and ultimately led to the denial of bail for the Gambino leadership. In a surprising twist, attorneys Bruce Cutler and Gerald Shargell were disqualified from defending Gotti and Gravano after prosecutors argued that their involvement in the case rendered them potential witnesses. The prosecution claimed that Cutler and Shargell not only had knowledge of illicit activities, but had also acted as in-house counsel for the Gambino family. Following this setback, Gotti enlisted the help of Albert Krieger, a Miami lawyer with a history of working alongside Joseph Bonanno. Tensions escalated between Gotti and Gravano, as recorded conversations revealed Gotti criticizing his newly appointed underboss for being overly ambitious, attempting to portray Gravano as the mastermind behind the murders of DiBernardo, Milito, and Di Bono. Gotti's efforts to mend their relationship were unsuccessful, leaving Gravano disenchanted with organized crime and increasingly uncertain about his ability to navigate his case without the guidance of his former attorney, Shargell. In a dramatic turn of events, Gravano made the pivotal decision to become a government witness, officially agreeing to testify on November 13, 1991. His choice was particularly significant, as he became the highest-ranking member of a New York crime family to turn informer. The trial against Gotti and Locascio unfolded in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York under the watchful eye of District Judge I. Leo Glasser. Jury selection commenced in January 1992, with an anonymous jury that was fully sequestered for the first time in a Brooklyn federal case, a precautionary measure taken due to Gotti's notorious history of jury tampering. The proceedings kicked off on February 12th, with prosecutors Andrew Maloney and John Gleason launching their case by playing recorded conversations in which Gotti discussed Gambino family affairs, including murders he sanctioned. These tapes also highlighted the tension between Gotti and his predecessor Castellano, laying the groundwork for establishing Gotti's motive for murder. The prosecution's case included testimony from an eyewitness to the Sparks hit, who identified Carneglia as one of the shooters. Then, on March 2nd, Gravano took the stand. He detailed Gotti's role within the Gambino family hierarchy and provided an in-depth account of the conspiracy to assassinate Castellano, recounting the execution and its aftermath. Gravano admitted to committing 19 murders, implicating Gotti in 4 of them. Despite attempts by defense attorneys Krieger and Anthony Cardinale to undermine his credibility during cross-examination, they found little success. Gotti himself erupted in court, calling Gravano a junkie, while his legal team tried to delve into his history of steroid use. After presenting a wealth of additional testimony and recordings, the government concluded its case on March 24th, setting the stage for a gripping legal showdown. During his testimony, Gravano revealed Gotti's pivotal role within the Gambino family's hierarchy and detailed the chilling conspiracy to murder Castellano, including the execution itself and its subsequent fallout. Gravano admitted to being involved in 19 murders, naming Gotti as a participant in 4 of those killings. Despite attempts by Gotti's attorneys, including Krieger and Anthony Cardinale, to undermine Gravano during cross-examination, they were unsuccessful. Gotti, in a fit of anger, branded Gravano a junkie while his legal team tried to bring attention to Gravano's past steroid use. After presenting further evidence and recordings, the prosecution concluded its case on March 24th. On June 23, 1992, Judge Glasser handed down life sentences without the possibility of parole for both Gotti and Locascio, along with a hefty fine of $250,000. Gotti reported to federal authorities to begin his sentence on December 14, 1992. In contrast, on September 26, 1994, a federal judge sentenced Gravano to 5 years. However, since he had already completed 4 years, he effectively faced less than a year behind bars. Even from his prison cell, Gotti continued to exert influence over the family, while the daily operations were managed by capos John Jackie Nose D'Amico and Nicholas Little Nick Carazzo. Carazzo was slated to become the acting boss, but received an 8-year prison sentence for racketeering. In his absence, Gotti's son John Jr. Gotti assumed leadership, only to plead guilty to racketeering in 1999 and receive a 77-month prison sentence. Peter Gotti assumed control of the notorious Gotti crime family around 2001, shortly before his brother John Gotti passed away in prison on June 10, 2002. Under Peter's leadership, the family's power and influence dwindled significantly, a stark contrast to their once dominant position as America's most powerful criminal organization just a few decades prior. In 2003, Peter was incarcerated, leading to a shift in authority to key members of the administration, including Nicholas Carazzo, Jackie D'Amico, and Joseph Carazzo, although Peter remained the official boss behind bars. As Gotti's rivals began to reclaim influence within the family, many of Peter's loyalists found themselves facing legal troubles, with several imprisoned or under indictment. Michael "Mikey" Scars de Leonardo, the former leader of the family's white-collar operations and one of the last remaining supporters of the Gotti name, eventually turned state's evidence. Faced with mounting pressure from law enforcement and credible evidence looming over his own racketeering trial, as well as accusations of embezzlement from the family's coffers, he chose to testify against mobsters from all 5 families. Between 2003 and 2005, De Leonardo provided crucial testimony against Peter Gotti and Anthony "Sonny" Ciccone before ultimately entering the Witness Protection Program to ensure his safety. In 2005, Nicholas Little Nick Carazzo and his right-hand man, Leonard "Lenny" DiMaria, walked out of prison after a decade spent behind bars for racketeering and loan sharking offenses spanning New York and Florida. That same year, U.S. law enforcement identified Carazzo as the new head of the Gambino crime family, with his brother Joseph taking on the role of consigliere. Arnold "Zeke" Squitieri served as the acting underboss, while Jackie D'Amico was a prominent figure closely associated with the Carazzo brothers. On February 7, 2008, a federal grand jury unleashed a sweeping indictment that led to the arrest of 54 members and associates of the Gambino family across New York City, its suburbs, New Jersey, and Long Island. This major operation, dubbed Operation Old Bridge, was the result of a 4-year FBI investigation. The indictment charged 62 individuals with a variety of serious crimes, including murder, conspiracy, drug trafficking, robbery, and extortion, with informant Joseph Vogliaro stepping forward as a key government witness. Operation Old Bridge dismantled a burgeoning alliance between the Gambinos and the Sicilian mafia, which aimed to expand its influence in the drug trade. Among those apprehended during the raids was Frank Cali, who would later become the boss of the Gambino family and was allegedly serving as the U.S. ambassador for the Inzerillo crime family. Most of the arrested individuals ultimately pleaded guilty, resulting in sentences of less than 3 years. In early 2008, federal and New York state authorities launched a significant crackdown, arresting the entire hierarchy of the Gambino family. During this upheaval, a trio of street bosses, Danny Marino, John Gambino, and Bartolomeo Vernacci, stepped in to lead the crime family while the upper echelon was behind bars. Fast forward to July 2011, when Domenico Cefalù emerged as the acting boss, marking the end of the Notorious Gotti era. Under Cefalù's leadership, the Sicilian faction, colloquially known as the Zips, gained dominance within the Gambino family. Crime reporter Jerry Capecci initially reported that Cefalù had stepped down in 2015, handing the reins to his underboss, Frank Cali. However, he later corrected himself, confirming that Cefalù was still at the helm. The Gambino family was estimated to have between 150 and 200 members, alongside over 1,100 associates, remaining entrenched in a wide range of illicit activities. Their operations spanned gambling, loan sharking, extortion, labor racketeering, fraud, money laundering, and narcotics trafficking. By 2012, the Gambino family retained a firm grip on key piers in Brooklyn and Staten Island, leveraging infiltrated labor unions to maintain their influence. Indictments from 2008 to 2014 highlighted their continued prominence in New York City's underworld. In 2009, the Gambino crime family witnessed the release of several key members from prison, marking a significant shift in their operations. On November 18th, that same year, a major crackdown by the NYPD led to the arrest of 22 individuals affiliated with both the Lucchese and Gambino families during Operation Pure Luck. This extensive raid targeted illicit activities, including loan sharking and illegal sports gambling on Staten Island. Authorities also uncovered a web of corruption involving bribes to New York City court officials and sanitation department personnel. Fast forward to 2014, and law enforcement agencies from the FBI and Italy launched a coordinated operation that netted 17 members of the notorious 'Ndrangheta mafia, specifically from the Ursino clan, alongside 7 associates from the Gambino and Bonanno families. Prosecutors charged the group with orchestrating a vast transatlantic drug trafficking scheme aimed at smuggling 500 kilograms of pure cocaine from Guyana in South America to the Gioia Tauro port in Calabria. U.S. Attorney Loretta Lynch highlighted Franco Lupoi, an associate of the Gambino family, as the central figure in this elaborate operation, alleging that he colluded with his father-in-law, Nicola Antonio Simonetta, a key player in the Ursino clan, to establish this criminal network. On December 12, 2017, law enforcement cracked down on the Gambino crime family, arresting 5 of its associates, Thomas Anzaone, Alessandro Sandro D'Amelio, Joseph Durso, Anthony Rodolico, and Anthony Saladino, along with 74-year-old Captain Johnny Boy Ambrosio. They faced serious charges related to running a sprawling, illegal racketeering operation from January 2014 to December 2017, encompassing extortion, drug trafficking, loan sharking, and illegal gambling activities. Also caught in the sweep was Frankie Boy Salerno, a soldier from the Bonanno crime family, accused of conspiring with the Gambino family. The allegations against Anzaone, D'Amelio, Durso, and Saladino painted a picture of a robust drug trade, as they were said to have sold large quantities of cocaine, marijuana, and Xanax. Prosecutors revealed that Salerno and Saladino were the suppliers, acquiring drugs in kilograms and distributing them through their network. An undercover agent claimed to have purchased cocaine in nearly a dozen transactions, spending $1,250 for just 1 ounce and nearly a kilogram over several months in early 2016. Ambrosio, dubbed the mastermind of a lucrative loan sharking and illegal gambling empire, reportedly operated unlicensed gambling venues, electronic gaming machines, and internet sports betting platforms. Allegations surfaced that he and Rodolico attempted to tamper with federal investigations by coercing a loan sharking victim to provide false testimony. In a shocking turn of events, Frank Cali, the Gambino boss, was shot dead outside his Staten Island home on March 13, 2019, marking the first assassination of a mafia boss since the notorious killing of Paul Castellano in 1985. Just 3 days later, 24-year-old Anthony Camello was apprehended and charged with the murder, which authorities believe stemmed from a personal feud rather than organized crime ties. After the death of Frank Cali, Lorenzo Manino was reported to have taken the helm as the new leader of the Gambino crime family. On March 14, 2019, Anthony Pandrella, an associate of the Gambino family, faced indictment for the murder and robbery of 77-year-old loan shark Vincent Zito, which occurred on October 26, 2018. Court documents revealed that Pandrella killed Zito out of fear for his own life, worried that Zito would come after him over an unpaid debt of $750,000. On the very day he was supposed to settle the debt, Pandrella went to Zito's home in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, and shot him at a point-blank range in the back of the head. He then stole assets from Zito's loan business and meticulously cleaned the crime scene before leaving. In a chilling twist, just hours later, Pandrella returned to Zito's home to check on his family and friends, even probing them about the police investigation into the homicide. On June 14, 2022, he was convicted of robbery, murder, and unlawful firearm use, receiving a 40-year prison sentence on October 6, 2022. In July 2019, Thomas Gambino, 47, identified by the FBI as a key player in the Gambino family, was among 15 suspected members of the Inserio crime family arrested in a series of coordinated raids across Sicily and the United States. Italian authorities revealed that Gambino had been captured on video a year prior, meeting with high-ranking members of the Inserio clan on a speedboat off the coast of Palermo, allegedly discussing the sale of property previously owned by Frank Cali. His brother, Rosario Gambino, was also taken into custody during these operations. On December 5, 2019, a significant federal crackdown on organized crime led to the arrest of Gambino family capo Andrew Campos, along with 9 other associates in the Bronx and Westchester County. They faced serious allegations involving violent threats aimed at extorting money. The following day, on December 6th, John Seaman Lakaj, a managing director at HFZ Capital Group and cousin of Mark Chippy Kokaj, was arraigned in Brooklyn Federal Court on charges related to a conspiracy of wire fraud and tax evasion. Prosecutors claimed that CWC Contracting, run by Kokai, Campos, and Vincent Fiore, engaged in corrupt practices, including bribing employees at various construction firms and real estate developers, notably HFZ Capital. Fast forward to January 18, 2023, when another wave of indictments struck the Gambino family. Capo Frank Calypso Camuso, soldier Louis Astuto, and associate Robert Rusty Basilish were charged alongside 20 others, including Genovese family soldier Christopher Jerry Chirchio and 26 companies, by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. This case centered around a kickback scheme orchestrated by Basilish, who served as vice president of the Grimaldi Group, allegedly siphoning off $4.2 million from contractors. Between April 2013 and July 2021, Basilish misused his insider knowledge to steal from his developer clients, sharing confidential bid information with subcontractors, among other illicit activities. The indictment further revealed that Astuto and associate Paul Noto funneled a portion of the kickback profits to companies owned by Camuso and his family. On November 8, 2023, a major crackdown led to the indictment of 16 members and associates of the notorious Gambino crime family on serious charges, including racketeering conspiracy, extortion, witness intimidation, and union corruption. Key figures in this indictment included Gambino Captain Joseph Lanni and soldiers Angelo Fifi Grattalone, James Lafort, and Diego Danny Tantillo. This operation was the result of a collaborative effort between U.S. federal authorities and Italian law enforcement. The accused mobsters allegedly employed violent methods to infiltrate garbage and carting companies, where they extorted money and secured no-show jobs. Notably, Diego Tantillo is also facing accusations of embezzling from employee pension funds and conspiring to rig demolition contract bids across New York City. Fast forward to June 5, 2024, when 17 members and associates of the Gambino family were hit with an extensive 84-count indictment. This case was tied to an illegal sports gambling operation based in Staten Island, which allegedly processed over $22.7 million in illegal bets, alongside a loan sharking scheme that raked in about $500,000 weekly from loan repayments. Among those arrested were Gambino soldiers John J. Lafort, Anthony J. Cinque, Jr., and John Matera, as well as associates Edward A. Lafort, Frederick P. Falcone, Sr., Giulio Pomponio, Daniel F. Bogan, and Colombo family associate Charles Fusco. The Gambino crime family engaged in various illegal enterprises, including racketeering, extortion, loan sharking, drug trafficking, and labor union corruption. They were also heavily involved in the construction industry, using their influence to control labor unions and extract payments from businesses. The Gambino crime family's legacy is marked by its significant influence on American organized crime and its cultural representation in media. The family's activities led to a deeper understanding of the mafia's operations and fueled public fascination with organized crime, depicted in movies and television shows like The Godfather and The Sopranos. The family's impact also extends to law enforcement, which ramped up efforts to combat organized crime during the 20th century, leading to the development of RICO, racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations, laws designed to dismantle such organizations. While law enforcement efforts have led to the decline of the Gambino family's power, they continue to exist, albeit at a reduced scale. The family's history serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of organized crime and its pervasive influence on American society.